Okay, welcome to another video. This video is going to talk about dictionaries. In a lot of your more modern programming languages, dictionaries are built in where you can easily import them. They are another data type that a little bit more advanced data type that is very useful. And so let's get started. A little bit later on, where I've got this highlighted here, this is kind of a real world example. Let's start off with talking about dictionaries. They are an unordered collection of keys and values. So you can think of a key as some kind of like a lookup value. Like, for example, your student ID, for example, could be seen as a key. And then the value would be the personal value that's associated with that, which would be like your name or something else. All of the keys must be the same type, and all of the values must be of the same type. Now, the keys and the values can be different types, but each of the keys have to be the same type, and each of the values have to be the same type. So let's look at how to declare a dictionary. So we have var, some variable name, then we have a keyword dictionary, and then we have the key data type, then we have the value data type equals dictionary key data type, which is the same as this here, and then the value data type with an open and closed parenthesis. So for example, we can create a dictionary called books that has a key of type int and a value of type string. So let's do that over here. I don't think I got that right. Let me just print out books just to see what it looks like. So if we run this and wait for a minute, okay, it comes out. This means that it's an empty dictionary. This is syntax that I've only seen for Swift. Every language is slightly different. But if you use a language quite a bit, you learn its syntax and then you get kind of used to it. This means an empty dictionary. So let's look. Before we do that, there are a few other ways that, this is a lot to type. As you can see here, this takes up, most of a line just to declare this. There are more concise ways of doing it, little shortcuts. You could write it like this, or you could write it like this if you'd like. I actually like the longer way myself, but feel free to use the others if you'd like. And so I'll kind of switch back and forth between the different types throughout the examples. So these two here are equivalent to this longer one that I have here. And here's the key data type, here's the value data type, and this just says, create a dictionary with these types, or this says create a dictionary, an empty dictionary with those types. So let's look at a real example. So we're going to still use the name books, even though we could use some other variable name. Feel free to use some other variable name. And I'm going to have 1 and 2 as the keys, and book 1 and book 2 as the values. So let's take this, let's write it here. And we can actually write it out like this, to where we have this, and then automatically put numbers into it. So remember, even if you did something like what we did before, you could do something like this if you wanted to. So here you're declaring a variable called myInt. It's of type int, has a value of 1. So down here, it's roughly the same thing. So here's the name of the variable. Here's the data type, like what we had int up here. This is the data type, and now this is the value, which for the int was 1. For the dictionary, it's all of this stuff. So now if we print this out, notice that it prints out books and it prints out 1 and 2. One thing to point out here, notice that this isn't in the same order. In the order that I declared it here, it's 1 and then book 1, 2 and then book 2. Here, it's not in that order. Remember, with the definition of a dictionary, it said an unordered collection of key and values. That means that the order is not guaranteed. With arrays, which we talked about a week or so ago, those are ordered. It is guaranteed that one is going to follow the other. But with dictionaries, it's not. And that's okay. The reason why is because usually the way we want to access items is through the key. So for example, let's say we want to access this value here with the key of 1. What we would write is books 1, and this should print out book 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out and I'll run this. You see, from type to any, Okay, let's see if that fixes it. Yeah, put the bang at the end, we get rid of all that stuff, and it prints out book 1. What it does is, this is kind of easy to get confused with arrays. This does not mean that it's at index 1. This means that we're looking at it by the key, which is this value here. So I could change this to something else, let's say 5, for example. Then I would put 5 here, and it'll still print out book 1. What would, and that's of course what it did. If I put book 1 here, there's not a key with that value, so we should get an error. Unless I broke something. I think I did. Okay, I think the reason why is because I put that bang on the end there. And since 1 isn't there, just outputs, see here it outputs nil. All of these were warnings. And so it will return nil because there isn't a 1 here. So let's continue on. Let's see. All right, so here's another example to where you could declare other books and you have other keys. I'll let you do that as an exercise yourself. There's really no need for me to do that since I've already done an example for you. But let's look at a real world example. This is something I've done dozens of times, if not hundreds of times in my career. Even though it's not in Swift, it's been in other languages, it still has the same logic. Let's say that you're writing a web application to retrieve data from a user filling out a form. Let's say a form for an application for like admission to a college or something else. Whenever you fill out that form and you click on submit, there's a process, there's a computer program in the background that takes those values from the form and does something with them. Sometimes you'll have little helper tools that are with the web browser that'll actually take the values for you automatically and put them in like a dictionary, for example. And so that's what I'm going to mimic here, is that I'm going to already have a dictionary called user data that contains the value from the form. And so let me get rid of all of this. Print this out and let me make it look a little prettier. And I want it to, that might be all right. Let me see if that's going to be okay. Let's have it then now just print out user data. And quite often with your forms, what happens is the key is going to be a string, and so is the data. The data that you type in, generally it's going to have that be all strings. And so I have both the key and the value as strings here. Let's just have it start off by printing out the user data just to see what's here. This will make sure everything's all right. Notice here, prints out the data. Notice also that the data is not in the same order as I entered it here. I had first name, last name, address line 1, address line 2, city, state, and zip as my keys, or you could think of those as your field values or field, your field variables that you're wanting to get filled out. In my example running this, I have city, address line 2, then zip code, state, last name, first name, and then address line 1. You run this, you may get something different. If I run this again, it's probably going to be different. Let's run this again and let's see if it is different. Okay, city is first like it was last time, but first name is now the second item. So each time you run this, it could possibly be in a different order. And that's okay because it's an unordered list. We really don't care what order it's in because we will access the elements not by where they're located in the dictionary because it's unordered. We actually will use the name of the key. So for example, here we will get whatever the user entered in for their first name, which it should be John. I'm going to comment this out so that way there's not as much data that is displayed, so it's less confusing. We run this, and of course it's complaining about some warnings, and down here at the bottom it says that there's an optional John. And so what that means is we could check to see if this is nil or not. And so the best way to do this would be say if user data, and I'm not going to do this all the time. I'm going to do it just one or two little examples and then that's it because I don't want you to worry about this part of it nearly as much on how to do this. But you could do something like this. If first name not equal to nil, then you would write this, else so this really allows you to be able to do some checking here before you start using a field. So I could create a variable here called var first equals, let me do it this way. Yeah, let me redo this. See, this is what happens whenever I do stuff on the fly. That's okay. I think we all learn a little bit better this way. First equals user data first name. And what that will do is that if user data first name is not nil, it'll take that value and put it in this variable called first. And actually what I'm going to do is do it this way. So that way I don't have to try to declare it twice or anything like that. And then I will put first equal nil here and then print invalid data. So to print out what the user first name is, let me do this, let me do this, let me do this, let me get rid of this too. And then down here, I can print out first. So here I take care of all the messy stuff. And the messy stuff is first name really a valid key in this dictionary? And we know it will be, but there's always a case that you will get data and you're not really sure what fields are in it. You know that there might be some fields sometimes that are there, or there might be some fields that are always there, but then some fields might not be there and they may be optional. So what this does is it checks to see if first name is in this dictionary called user data. If it is, then we go ahead and assign first equal to that value. If it's not, then we say that first is equal to nil. And then down here, we can do our regular stuff with this variable called first. So let's see if I did this right. I think I did it right, but as you know, I sometimes make mistakes. Must be a string. So what I'm going to do is actually make this the empty string. And see here, it prints out John. which is the value here in first name. And so it's what it does is since it's not equal to nil, it'll print this out. You could change this to some other variable that we have here. Like for example, let's change it to state. And we'll just keep the variable being first for right now. It really doesn't matter. It should print out DC. Yeah, it prints out DC. One thing I want to show you here, I wasn't real consistent. Notice that almost all of the keys here are uppercase, starts with an uppercase letter. With first name and last name, I did not make them uppercase. So I'm not being consistent, so that's shame on me for that. They really should be more consistent than what I've got. Let's say we make a mistake. And let's say I typed a lowercase s here. This is not equal, this state with a lowercase s is not equal to this. So what happens is whenever Swift looks at this and it looks up for this key called state, it does not find it here. So it should print out this. And to make that a little bit easier to see, I'm going to do the following. And so what it'll do is it'll print out first, and then it should print out nothing beside it, which means that it wasn't able to find this, so it's assigned first equal to this value. Up here inside of okay. Oops, I made a mistake. This needs to be like that. Let me run it again. Okay, and it prints out first. Another thing you could do is if you're not really sure what's going on here with the if statement, go ahead and put your print statement here. I do this a lot to see if something is true or false or what's being executed in my code. Because user data state, if it's possible that there could be a state like this, state all lowercase, it is actually equal to the empty string like what I got here. This would produce the same output, but it would actually execute this piece of code, jump down here and print this out. So to verify for sure which part, if this body of the if gets executed or if the else gets executed, we could put a statement in here just to give us an idea. So if we run this, we see it got here and then first. So we know by putting this print statement here that this else statement is getting executed and not this. And this is printed out. So an exercise I'm going to leave for you. You may want to pause the video after I explain this before you go on. Try to put a couple of the different keys in here like city or zip code. Change it to something and see if you get the right data. See if you get Washington. See if you get that kind of stuff. Then try a few keys that are not in our dictionary. Maybe like, for example, gender. Gender is not a value in here. So you can type in gender and you can see what happens. We should get the empty string. And make sure you understand kind of what's going on there. Okay, see that? So, like I said, I'm going to leave that as an exercise. Pause the video, try a few different values if you'd like. So let's scroll down. We talked about accessing values where we looked at the first name. Here's also an example of creating a variable called full name that contains the first name and the last name. So that's an exercise I'll leave for you if you want to try to type that in. As I stated a minute ago, don't get this confused with arrays. This one example up here with the books, it's kind of easy to do that because we have integers as the keys. But for this example here, for the user data where we have keys like first name, last name, that's not nearly as confusing because as you can tell, that looks nothing like accessing an array since that's a string value there. But please keep that in mind that even though the syntax looks similar, you've got to keep track of what your variable is, if it's an array or if it's a dictionary, stuff like that. Sometimes you want to access all of the keys or the values in an array. And so one way to do that is we can use a for loop. So let's look at this. Let me go ahead and get rid of all of this. We'll keep our user data dictionary that we have, and here's a for loop. And what this is going to do is that for each of the values in user data, it's going to print them out one by one. So it'll print out John, it'll print out Doe, it'll print out 101 Main Street. It'll print out the empty string for address line 2. It'll print out Washington, it'll print out DC, and it'll print out the zip code 20001. What order it's going to print in, we're not sure, because remember that a dictionary is an unordered collection. So this will be in any order. So let's run this and let's see what it does. Okay, so it prints out DC, and so this isn't in the exact order that we have here. What happens here is that it takes each value. You can think of values as really, you can think of it kind of as an array, because it really is an array of all of these values in here. And each time through the loop, it'll update data with a new value, which we then output. We can also do this with the keys. So instead of writing values there, we could write keys, and it'll print out all of these keys. Okay, notice here, address line 2, address line 1, city, last name, first name, state, and zip code. They're not ordered. This is really good to see if like a dictionary has a certain value. You know, you could check to see if a certain like key is in actually these keys here. As you use dictionaries, you'll use these from time to time. I just want you to know right now that they are there. Something that's even a little bit more useful, I believe, is to do the following, to where you can get the key and value at the same time. This is really good for whenever you're debugging something, or you're wanting to display some of the data to the screen, or you're wanting to do something to every key and value in the data. You want to manipulate it somehow, or do some kind of error checking or something like that. And so what we do here is we access, see that this is our dictionary, and it knows then to put each, put a key here and put a value into this variable, and then we print these out. So this will go through each item. You can think of each one of these as an item, a key value pair. And so to start off, and it's an unordered list, so you don't know what order it's going to be in. So it starts off with the key that's called state, and then the value DC. Then it does address line 1, which is another key with its value, which is Main 101 Main Street. Then it goes with last name, which is a key. Then Doe. First name, which is also a key, and then John. Address line 2 is the empty string. Zip code, which is 2001. City, Washington. So you could do different things with this kind of stuff. You could check to see, depending on your keys and values, maybe there's certain things you want to do to the values based on if they are certain types of values. Like for example, if key is equal to let's say first name, or key is equal to last name, maybe we want to do something like this. User data key is equal to value uppercase. Can't remember exactly what the uppercase function was. Let's see if this runs, and now we can print out user data down here. First name. Okay, yeah. I'm using first name and last name as variables. They should be strings. This is actually a rookie mistake, which I should have seen right away, and I didn't, but that's okay. Value has no type string, no uppercase. Is it uppercase like that, or is it just upper? I can't remember. This is horrible. I use several different languages. That's why I'm having trouble with this. So let's actually go out and Swift strings uppercase. So as we're debugging this on the fly, uppercased. Okay, that's what it is. So let's go back. This is actually the curse of using several different languages, is you forget certain things if you use a ton of different languages. Now, I'm not discouraging anybody from learning several languages. You need to do that. But in the line of work that I do, there's several different languages that I'm dealing with, and but in most jobs that you have, you'll have 2 or 3 that you'll be working with. You'll become an expert in it. It's not a big deal, and you'll know exactly what you need to do. But if you're like a teacher like me, to where you're dealing with several different languages, it's easy to forget things and forget what goes with what language. So first here, we print out each key and the value, which is what you see up here. And then what we do is down here, we check to see if the first name, if the key is the first name or the last name. If it does, we're just going to uppercase the whole thing. So you notice down here, John is now uppercase and Doe is uppercase. So this is pretty powerful. You could do different things here, where if the key is equal to certain things, you can do certain functions to it. You could do certain kind of checks to make sure that certain things are right. Like, for example, this zip code, you want to make sure they're all numbers, or that it's 5 or 9 digits long. For state, maybe you want the abbreviation, so you want to make sure that it's 2 letters in length. Maybe you want to double check to make sure that somebody is putting a city in there, that this isn't empty, stuff like that. And you can group several of these together if you've got a lot of things that are in common. Like, for example, for first name and last name, these are both names, and so we want to do something common to both of those. So here we go. Let's see what else. One thing to keep in mind, this is a little bit beyond the scope of this class. It is possible to have multiple levels of a dictionary. So for example, a dictionary within a dictionary. They call that a multi-level dictionary. And so here's a declaration of a multi-level dictionary. We have a dictionary, and we have a string key, and then the value is actually another dictionary that has an integer key and a value and a string value. So how that would look is, for example, your first dictionary here, the key string, it's going to have to be a string, so you have toys. Then you have a whole dictionary in here, which is highlighted, which is, this one has a value of 1, this has a value of 2, car and truck. Then you could have another. Here's another key in my dict, which has its value is a dictionary, which are these values here. And so how do you access those? How do you access certain elements there? You would type in the name of the dictionary, then you would type in the key like you normally would, but then since it's a dictionary within a dictionary, you would then have another square bracket and then the element inside there. Now, I see this as a little bit of an advanced topic, so I just want you to know that these exist. And if you need to use it sometime in the future, it is possible to do it. Right now, that's all I expect you to do, is just to know that they exist. And they can get kind of funky, they can get kind of hard to deal with, so you don't want to do a lot of that, but there are times that is useful. How to change a value in a dictionary using a key. We kind of already showed a little bit of that, but let's look at this example here. We actually did some of that in This example here, where we updated the key here and just set it equal to the value uppercase. But let's go ahead and get rid of this. Let's look at a simpler example. So what we want to do is, here we have a dictionary with two keys, name and surname. So we have John Doe, and we want to update the key name to Jane. So we want to change this from John Doe to Jane Doe. The way to do that is the name of the dictionary, and then in the bracket you put your key that you're interested in accessing, which in this case is name, and then we update that value. So we just set that equal to Jane, and it knows to go in there and change John to Jane, which is what we see here. Let's run this. Let's see what we get. Yeah, so as you see here, now this updates it to name, Jane, surname, Doe. Okay. You can get all the keys in a dictionary. Sometimes that is helpful. And so the way we do that is, you want all the keys. Remember before with the for loop, we had our name of dictionary dot keys. We can put that in an array like this. Remember with the slice stuff, I think the dictionary keys is actually an array slice. We put an array around it like this, and it converts it to an array. So this will print out all keys, which is name and surname. So a little exercise for you would be to create another dictionary and have it print out all the keys. You can also have it print out all the values or access all the values by doing dict values, like so. And so now the first one will print out name, surname. The last one will then print out the values John and John Doe. And you could also add new elements to a dictionary. So let's say, for example, a little further down, you find out, maybe this is through a form or something like that, that the gender of the person is a male. So we can print out the dict, and then we can also print out, let's do that. Okay, so this is the new dictionary with the gender male, and then I'll leave it as an exercise for you to try to run this command on the new dictionary and this command on all the values. And of course you should get name, surname, and gender whenever you do the keys, and you should get John Doe female or John Doe male, not necessarily in that order. Running across here, notice this put it in the reverse order what we have it. Let me see, what else is there. Let's say you want to remove a key from a dictionary, which is sometimes the case. Maybe you're looking at the values and you find out that somebody puts in something really weird. Let's say, for example, if dictionary gender, okay, let's not equal to male, and dictionary gender not equal to female. We then want to then say dict gender is equal to nil. In other words, if it's not going to be one of these two values, we just want to say, hey, we don't know what the gender is. Let's just say that the gender can only be male or female, just to simplify things a little bit. If it's not male or female, it'll replace it with nil and just get rid of it. Or you could also do something like this, dictionary gender and then just set it equal to like the empty string, which would mean maybe I don't know what it is. For right now, I'll just comment that out. That's something I'll let you play with. So since we got male in here, this should go ahead and print out the dictionary, and this really shouldn't do anything. Just to be able to prove that, let's put a print statement in here. I like putting like a got here that tells me if we are in that if statement or not. I do that a lot in code that I'm debugging to see exactly what's going on, if an if statement or if a block of code is being executed or not. Sometimes whenever I read the code, I don't think that a block of code is getting executed, but if I throw in a print statement and I see that it is, like it got here, and if it's printing got here, uh-oh, something's wrong with my logic. I'm not reading this right or whatever. So it didn't get there, and it still printed out the gender is male. Let's go in here and let's change this to something else. Let's just say male 1. Let's say we made a mistake and somebody typed a 1 after male. What this should do then is get rid of gender, and we should just go back to our original dictionary, which only has these 2 fields. But let's see what happens. Okay, that's exactly what happens. We set down here, the dictionary is equal to nil. Notice that we got the got here statement, which means that this did get executed. In other words, what it does is it sets this key equal to nil, and it really just removes it from the dictionary. Let's say you don't want to do that. You want to leave the key there. You just want to set it equal to something else. And let's say I want to set it equal to the empty string. I could do this, and it'll still print out gender here, but it just put it as a empty string. So let's see if that's actually what happens. And yes, that's what happens. We still keep gender there and set it equal to the empty string. So the setting it equal to nil, like what I got here, will actually remove that key from the dictionary. So that's important. That could be a test question. Let me see if that's it. Also, if you want, you could look online, do a search on Swift Dictionaries, and there's a ton of things that'll come up. You can also go to this link if you'd like, but I think that is plenty for this video. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate that, and see you next time.